Materials Monday. I hope you are all with us today, whoever managed to make it. Um, this is our usual moment where we come together. And if you cannot come together, it doesn't matter because you can have a look at it later on the Facebook page or my YouTube page or maybe even LinkedIn. So, as the Biophilic Hub, we are a community where we are interested in shifting our lives and our businesses. And in particular, we're speaking about businesses who work in the construction and home industry. We want to, because this also has a very important impact on the world. We are looking to shift to become more nature centered, and by this is why we connect to Biophilic Hub. So we talk about biophilic design, but we also talk about nature walks, we talk about sustainability, we talk about a holistic way of living, okay? Because at the end of the day, we want to look after the planet, we want to stay close to the planet, and in doing so, we will be able also to find a more better way of living, better for our well-being in general. So on Mondays, we talk about materials, but not just materials, furniture, finishings, things to that extent, which I love very much. Because coming from a sourcing and procurement background, I have always loved very much going out and looking for things. And since I discovered biophilic design, even more so. So as I am already very much into sustainability, and the sustainability and with the biophilic design combined together can really produce a force of good, I would say. So we finished our last series last week. We wrapped up with some of the last things which we spoke about Salone. So Salone is here in Milan because I am based in Milan, and we did quite a few sessions on what we saw there. So today I want to go back to something a bit more general, and I'm talking about upholstery. Upholstery is very important. It's the sofas which we sit on when we get home. It's the sofas our children play on when they are small, that our grandparents or parents sit down and have their afternoons with a cup of tea, a book, or whatever. And sometimes we even fall asleep on sofas. So they are, should I say, at the center of our living spaces and at the center of our family spaces. And even if you live by yourself, I am sure you spend a lot of time on your sofas. So we want to make sure that as the sofa or the armchairs or upholstery in general has such a leading role in our spaces, we want to try to make sure that not only is it sustainable, but it is also healthy. And by sustainable, I mean we want to try to make sure that it's sustainable right through. So I'm not just speaking about the textiles outside. In fact, I would take a moment and see what a sofa is actually made of. Okay, so sofas usually have several layers to them. They will have the frame. So first of all, they will have been designed, obviously, and they will have their frame. They will have the springs in it. They will have some stuffing. They will have a kind of lining which covers the stuffing. And they will have one or two layers of the final textiles. Now, we are going to break down and see how these things ought to be made for them to be truly sustainable. And then we will have a look at what kind of sofa would you be looking for? And so what kind of questions would you be asking for it to be healthy and for it to fit your needs? So first, let's have a look at the frame. We want to make sure that the frame is made in solid wood. Now, these are all questions which you're going to have to ask the people who are actually selling you the sofa. And you've got to make sure that they know the answers, okay? So when we are talking about the frame has got to be in solid wood. Beech, I know, is often used because it's a very strong, but at the same time elastic kind of wood. And this is for the frame, okay? After the frame, which has got to be cut and possibly conjuncted together without glue, okay? So if there's a curve to it, it ought to be shaped directly. Then we usually have the springs which are put between cross sections of ute, okay? Now this is important because according to how many springs there are in your sofa will depend on how solid it is. So how much you can jump on it, how that it is not too soft, okay? So we want to make sure that it is in fact made of ute and not just a plastic covering, and that the springs are in fact steel springs, okay? And then you will crisscross the utes, which will go into the frame, and they will put the springs between two layers of crisscross of utes. As I said, it's important that that there is a certain amount of springs to it, and not just springs. Sometimes they do the springs which are done directly from one end to another, okay, the beds, and they're sort of wavy. No, that's not what we are looking for. For it to be well constructed, we want the circular springs which are put between the two layers of ute. So you've got to ask what kind of springs are there. If it's just a layer of wavy springs on the top, or if they are the circular springs. Okay. Once we have all this, we have got to go to the latex. So we're not talking about polyester, polyester, or whatever other kind of plastic or polystyrene. We are really looking for natural latex. Natural latex requires a certain amount of craftsmanship because it bounces back quite fast. So you want to look that, and you've got to ask them what is inside. And they will tell you polyester, they will tell you all kinds of other kinds of stuffing. What you really are looking for is a natural latex and natural wool, because some people put wool inside as well, but it's still got to be wool is only natural, but or possibly organic or raw wool if it's on the inside. This latex ought to be protected by some kind of cotton, okay? So why do we want to protect it? Because we want to try and keep out the dust mites and things to that extent, okay? So we've got to try and keep it clean. Keeping it clean is very important. That's why when I say after we have done the 100% natural latex, which will be formed around the frame and the ute, we will be putting the natural latex. But we also want to make sure that It is covered with cotton because we want to make sure the dust doesn't goes from one place to the other. And then, of course, we are going to start with the coverings. Now, ideally, we want 2 layers of covering. One ought to be the cotton, okay? Raw organic cotton, we don't need it to be particularly fancy. And this is to give another covering, okay? And the second covering, which will be of the textile of your choice, really ought to be completely removable so that it can be washed. This is very important. Because why do we want to wash it? Because when we choose, whatever kind of color you choose, this is totally up to you. If it's a natural dye, all the better. If it's linen or cotton or wool, a natural textile is obviously what we are looking for. But we are also looking for textiles which have no flame retardant and textiles which certainly do not have these magic qualities of no stains. So if they tell you, this is really resistant, it doesn't stain, you can throw a glass of wine on it, nothing will happen. There I start to have a few doubts, because at that point it must have been chemically treated. So I understand that obviously if you have young children, maybe this is not ideal, but I would suggest rather than going for quite a strong cotton, which can be washed. Okay, so you've got to have it totally removable, because whatever treatment they give for fire retardants and for making it stainless, it's going to have some toxic chemicals in it. So this is what you've got to ask. I would certainly ask about the exterior, so the textiles. Okay, now I don't know how much everybody's going to know and how much they are actually have 100% natural latex, or the jute and the spiral springs. So if you're going for mass production sofa or an industrially produced sofa, not necessarily will you find that. If you're having it handcrafted just for you, then I presume you will be able to find this. But in any case, you choose the textiles, and the textiles is clearly the ones which you get most in contact with. So it's the ones which you really have got to look after. So key is to make sure that it is totally removable and washable. Preferably no flame retardants, and no stain-free magical ingredients. Often the frame sometimes is made of plastic or MDF. Now MDF is more an Italian, a medium density. This is not so good. It's basically a chipboard because it's got a lot of adhesives in it, and adhesives are full of formaldehyde, which is in fact quite toxic. So we would try and avoid these. Now, I don't. If you listen to everything I said through this, you'll say, okay, I can't go and buy myself a sofa in the supermarket or in the not in the supermarket, but in the big stores. I've got to have it made. It's going to cost me much more. So I would say, if that's not possible, baby steps are better than nothing, and priority is on the textiles. And then I would go to the foam. Um, and lastly, I would go to the frame to see if they have a wooden frame which is FCS certified. Now, that reminds me, let's have a look at the certifications. I forgot the cushions. So we have the cushions. The cushions are very important. The cushions, usually the back cushions, can be made in feather, but sometimes if you are a vegan, you can find alternatives to feathers. And but your seat, okay, ought to be in latex, so natural latex. Now, seating is very important for our comfort. Okay. So sometimes we really want to try and sit down on the sofa. Some people, you can say you can buy a sofa without sitting on it. That's also true. But we've got to remember a few things. Each person has a different utility and a different expectation from their sofa. As we said at the beginning, maybe you're a family with small children, so children are going to be jumping around on the sofa. Maybe you want a very resistant stuffing there, and maybe quite wide seating and very soft, cozy sorts of things which you sort of fall into, and they really wrap around you. Um, that doesn't stop the fact that they've got to be removable textiles, and but you've got to think of that when you're buying it. And also another thing which I found personally very important to think of is the armrest. So how do you want your armrest? Do you ever sort of lie down on your sofa and watch television? So how hard has it got to be? Do you want it to be softer? So do you want it made out of, like the back cushions with feathers inside it? So you can sort of make it in a softer way. Do you want the cushions so that the children can play and do their houses? So maybe it's more than one cushion which they can take away from and build their little huts, as children do, and quite rightly so, because they are children. And also the other thing is that if your husband or yourself or your children are quite tall, they can sit on seats which are quite deep. Whilst on the other hand, if you have shorter, apart from the children, if you have people who are slightly shorter, and you can't manage to touch the bottom, so the floor, because your seating is so low, it can become uncomfortable. So you've really got to look at how you can regulate the cushions. So you may have to adjust for both kind of people. So you may want quite a long seat, but an adjustable back. Okay, so that's important. So the size of the seat, so the depth of the seat, the amount of cushions, and the softness of the cushions, and the softness of the seat. Because if you're looking for that cozy I want to just sink into my armchair and forget about the or my sofa and forget about the world, then that's one thing. On the other hand, maybe you have a grandma or a mother who would like to sit down quite comfortably, but not feel they are sinking in and then have a problem of getting up. So you've got to take that into account as well. That is when you want to choose the style of your sofa. The position of your sofa is another thing. And what I suggest here, um, hooking onto biophilic design, is that your sofa be in a position where you can sit and enjoy a view. Okay, so we don't want it in a hallway. We want it to be quite central and possibly with a view in front of it. So these are my ideas for sofas. I don't know about you, but I certainly would go back and think of the questions to ask when I am buying it. So first, know what you want. Who's going to be using it? Who are the main users? What is its role within our living room? Is it key? Is it a secondary? Is it a sofa which you want to put in your study? Or is it a sofa where you want to have in your main living room? So the role of this sofa is very important because it will also determine the style of the sofa. The color of the textiles is totally your choice. There's no good answer to this because that's got nothing to do with the choice. The textiles are probably one of the most important things which you have to choose. So apart from the color and a pattern, if you want a pattern, I strongly suggest you try to use natural materials and that you make sure that these materials are truly natural and have not been treated. Now, in the UK, and I am sure in the US as well, for public spaces, they will probably have to use treated textiles because we're speaking about laws of safety, and they will need probably fire retardants on it. But within your home, you can decide what you like. So if this is going to be for your home, then I suggest really trying to get it as natural as possible. Absolutely, that you can take them off completely and wash them. If you can take off the two layers, that is the external textile and the internal lining, apart obviously from the lining which is fixed to the natural latex, these two would be best to have them washable. Speaking about textiles and having them natural, of course, you can check if they are certified. So we want them OECO, OEKO, okay, tex. That means that they've got not too many chemicals, or however they've been certified that they're not harmful. If you can manage to get the cotton, which is an organic cotton or organic wool, that means it's being produced organically. And in the case of wool, also that the sheep have been carefully looked after, sustainably looked after. There's another certification which I can't remember at the moment, which is specifically for the rearing of the sheep. And then the other one, which of course is very important, is the down, RDS. So you want that any of the feathers have been responsibly, I can't say harvested, but looked after, okay? So we're not going around killing any ducks or anything to that extent. Now, I know this may sound a bit of a nuisance, but especially the textiles is very important. Then if you want to dig further, you can look for the certification of the natural latex, which is called Aerolatex, and of course the FSC for the wood. I have ranted on, I've gone on quite a lot here about it because I think it's very important. As I say, The comfort of it will depend a lot on who is going to use it and where it is going to go. Okay, so if you're going to put armchairs in a waiting room, it certainly we're not going to have those very soft, cozy armchairs where people just sort of throw themselves on. So they're going to be much more rigid. Um, the quality of the sofa will depend also on the type of springs. So if you have children and you know your children are going to be jumping on a sofa, which is quite normal, then really you have to ask questions. What kind of springs are inside? What kind of filling is there? Because otherwise it just won't last. It just won't last. So there are a few brands, but Biosofa is one, Berto is one, but I haven't looked at any of the American brands or UK brands. So I don't feel I want to give out any recommendation on the actual brands to use. But for me, this is just, a kind of conversation of what kind of questions to ask. Okay, to ask yourself and to ask um, the seller. So, first, have a very clear idea of what is the role of the sofa and who is going to be using it. Then, start asking questions and certifications from the outside in. So, that is from the surfaces where you have the most contact. Okay. Well, that's all for me for today. And we have another Materials Monday. I thought this sofa thing was a great thing to share. I often had white sofas, even when my children were young. It was an absolute disaster. But luckily, they were washable. Of course, they never remained completely, well, they were off white. At the end of the 15 years, by the time they grew up, we had to change our sofa because, well, they jumped around a lot. Okay, then. Well, thanks for your attention, and see you next Monday. Oh, I forgot to tell. Oh, one person on Facebook as Papa.